and welcome to our next edition of the West Midlands People Podcast. It's been a while since we did one, but I'm delighted that we've got Rekha Haughton on the show today, along with myself, Ashley, and my colleague John from West Recruitment. So Rekha, hello.
Hello, how are you, Ashley?
I am very well. I'm absolutely over the moon to have you on here. I know it's been arranged previously and cancelled, so I'm really excited to have you. So why don't you kick us off then, Rekha, and just give an overview of you, your experience and what you do now.
No problem. So hello, firstly, and hello, John, as well.
Hello.
So my name is Rekha Haughton, and I am currently an inheritance tax specialist and will writer. So anything connected to death, I'm your lady. So on a protection point of view. But I haven't always done that. Yes, and I do actually live in Staffordshire, which is like the neighbour for the West Midlands. I'm married and I've got 2 children, both at teenager stage, A-level stage, so very dodgy at the moment with all the pandemic going on. But in terms of my work life, beforehand, I have got very corporate background. I pretty much started my career with the NEC, based in, that's the more recent one in Birmingham, the NEC, but I was based at the ICC on Broad Street. And it was all about conferences, hospitality, the travel industry. So did that for a number of years. And then went to work for Manchester United Football Club as their head of non-match day sales. So basically, other than Premier League games and Champions League games, the stadium was under my control and my team. So we were just filling the stadium with any kind of events, conferences, exhibitions. We brought on the X Factor, what we did, rugby union, rugby finals, etc. So did a lot there, spent a few years at Man United, very, very surreal, and some fabulous stories that I can share over a glass of fizz one day with you, Ashley. And then moved on to be a deputy commercial director for Brunel University. There was responsible for, what's that, £50 million budget. Had about 6-7 head of departments report, and it was a fabulous job, really. Absolutely loved it, but I had a bit of a health scare, long story cut short. So really it was that inspired me, and actually a family bereavement that inspired me to really look at the will side of it. I initially was going to retrain as an IFA to do the will side of it, and the more I looked at it, if I'm honest, doing pensions didn't interest me, looking at mortgages did not interest me. It was specifically looking at estate planning, because you know, we're intelligent people, and people that I talk to about the importance of getting your estate planning done. So many people are so shocked because they didn't realise the law of the lands and they don't know about these things. You know, we're talking to, I've got consultant doctors as clients, and believe it or not, they hadn't put down wills or anything. So it was that really interested me. And as you can see, my background is quite sort of high, senior management regulated. So I wanted to self-regulate. So I joined the Society of Will Writers and I trained there, because to keep your qualification, you had to do a minimum hours, 15 hours a year. I think for the first year I did like 70 odd hours. I really wanted to train and really be the best. And I really just started off doing your Fred and Doris's type wills, and friends and family that hadn't got anything done, putting those in place. But it was a client, an elderly client of mine, very early on, that said to me, you've got to speak to my son. He's on his 3rd marriage. He's got kids coming out of his ears. He's got businesses. He's got nothing in place. And they gave me his details, and actually the son phoned me the following day and sort of said, well, my mum said I've got to ring you and talk to you. I mean, this guy was in his late 50s. He was like, my mum said I've got to ring you. And it was obvious that, you know what, a simple mirror will was just not going to cut it for him. Don't get me wrong, a mirror will, even a basic one, for him was better than nothing. But the fact is, he had a blended family, he had different baby mamas, you know, and he had a lot of asset, a lot of money, lots of stock shares. He had buy-to-let properties. He had 3 businesses, and they were, in total, they turned over about 15 million. So he was a limited company director for a few businesses. So really what we did was like, well, let's get something in really quickly as sort of a band-aid, and then let's look at proper inheritance tax planning for you. Because you are given allowances by the government. They do allow you to mitigate inheritance tax. That's completely legal to do. What we don't do is tax avoidance, which is absolutely illegal, but you can mitigate. You're given policies, and it's about finding those policies and applying it to the estate. So it was a kind of before and after, that if you hadn't have put anything together, this is what your children, who were the beneficiaries after his wife, this is the type of inheritance tax that your children would have paid. An inheritance tax is the difference between your allowance and your net estate. So pretty much you were looking at 40% inheritance tax on an £11 million estate. So do the maths.
Wow.
It was a lot. So we put lots of policies in place to mitigate his inheritance tax. And then within a week, he'd given about 8 of his friends, who were also very high net worth business owners, my details. And I think over the years, that's how the business has grown. So a lot of my work is with business owners, making sure that they've got things in place, wills, lasting powers of attorney, so incredibly important, but people don't understand what they are and the implications they have on your finances if you lose mental capacity.
That's what I was going to come on to, actually, because I know when we first had a conversation, there were a lot of things that absolutely blew my mind. So what are the repercussions of not getting these things in place now? I mean, let's face it, nobody wants to think about dying, but you never know what's going to happen. And I even said to my mum, she needs to try and protect what she's built now, because if she was to die tomorrow, and hopefully she doesn't, but if she was, I don't think she even has an up-to-date will or anything. So what are the repercussions if people aren't getting these, aren't getting their lasting powers of attorney in place, or they're not going through the process with someone like yourself, Rekha?
Yeah. So by not having a will, if you don't have a will in place, your estate is distributed in accordance to the intestacy law. So pretty much the government decides who's going to get your money, and your immediate family won't necessarily get all of it. And under the intestacy law, you've got extended family that have got right for your money, which is why somebody passes away, and we've all been there, haven't we? We all know about that distant relative that no one's ever heard from, and then all of a sudden someone passes away, they're just around sipping, people are just seeing what money there is left over for them. So it's really important that you take control of your estate. Who do you want your money to go to, and who do you not want it to go to? Because if it's a member of your family you really don't want them to have any money, you need to take steps. Again, I have clients that say to me, you know what, Rekha, I rent, I haven't really got my own property, I've got a small car, don't have a lot of assets, but they have children. And again, it's the understanding that if you have minors, so children under the age of 18, and husband and wife pass away, God forbid something happens to them, and there is no will, the children, the official process is the local authority will take immediate guardianship of those children, because there is no will to determine where these kids are going to go. So they've got a duty of care to minors that they'll take and house the children, which is, which we're talking about foster care for a short time. It's only then that a member of family or somebody comes forward to apply for permanent guardianship. Now, don't get me wrong, they're going to fast track that pretty quickly, but then you've got potentially a member of your family or friends or somebody that's applying for guardianship who actually you really didn't want guardianship for anyway. So why leave it to the process, dictate it yourself? And the local authority has to do that, because they don't know that your mum might be an abuser, whoever. So they've got to follow the process. Yeah. So even if you've got very little, but you've got kids, just please put a simple, will in place. For a married couple, you're talking £150. It's very little, really, in the grand scheme of things, just to name guardians. So that's the reason why to have it. Business owners, you need to make sure that the shares of your business is being properly set in your will, so that it might be right for you to have a business trust within your will. looking at succession planning. If you're thinking you're going to leave your shares to your wife and she's like got no interest in the business, how's that going to work? So it's thinking about what the succession planning after you pass away, and making sure that your family's estate is being mitigated. And the biggest one I mentioned was lasting powers of attorney. And that's a tough one because you've lost mental capacity, but you're not dead. You're in that kind of grey area. So what was happening is people were losing mental capacity, being extremely vulnerable, and heartbreaking to say, it was very close friends and family that would say, go to mum, you know, who's got dementia or something's happened, mum, just sign here. And all of a sudden she signed away a house to somebody. So that's where the government needed to understand actually how many people this has been affected. So brought in the Office of the Public Guardian to make sure that they are protecting vulnerable people. And what will happen is if you don't have a power of attorney in place, your assets can potentially get frozen, which means money doesn't go in and out your accounts. That's why it's good to have a power of attorney in place, because whilst you have capacity, you're telling the courts, if something happened to me, I would like X person to be able to deal with my finances and make decisions about my healthcare as well. Because they won't automatically give it to your next of kin, because as far as they're concerned, you might be on the brink of a divorce. So you don't want the other half to go and rinse your accounts out. So this is there to protect people. It really is. The clues on the title, it's a lasting power of attorney. So once you register it with the courts, it lasts forever. You can tweak it and change it. It's flexible enough for you, but you don't have to keep redoing it. And you kind of think that you spend a lot of money for your contents insurance. You know, you insure your sofa and your TV, but you're not insuring yourself and your brain, which is so important. And again, with business owners, you know, they'll say, well, I've got key man's policy or I've got life insurance. And I'll say to them, but that activates on death. What happens if you're out the business, you've lost mental capacity? Is your business partner going to be happy with your wife coming in to run the show? And actually, Mr. Other Partner, if the director loses mental capacity and he's your sales guy, what impact does that have on your business? So again, what contingency plans have you got as directors of a business if one director loses capacity? So it's really important to look at that and what they've got in place and make sure that there's some succession planning there.
So do you think it's important then, if someone is wanting to get their lasting powers of attorney in place and it's a business director and they have a business partner, do you think it's important for them to have their business partner involved in that process as well, or not necessarily involved, but be aware of it and be privy to that information so as to not cause issues in the future? Or how would you suggest that business owners manage that process if they have other people involved at a high level in the business?
Yeah, I generally, with the process for me, is see the business, the directors first and talk about the business. And then we take it separately, because obviously, whilst they're business partners and directors and obviously very friendly, their personal life is their personal life. And under data protection, I wouldn't cross-reference that anyway. So it's, okay, well, you've got one common goal. Let's look at that first. This is your business. What are your shares? What are your assets? What are you doing? And then we just take it then individually. And then you then as couples discuss their personal life. And then with the business, that's when I put together bespoke plans for them, because everyone's situation is different. I've gone into a client, you know, obviously no names, but I've gone into a client that's in the middle of the meeting when I've prompted that I need to know, you can't have any skeletons in your closet kind of thing, because I need to plan and make sure your assets are protected. And in the middle of the meeting, he's just confessed to his wife that he's got a love child. That she did that, you know, I could write a book on this. Yeah, I'm like, I'll just leave you my card. I'll be back.
And you were sat there at the time?
I'm sitting there and going, right, okay, thank you for being honest. But, you know, clearly she needed a bit of time to absorb that. But it is, and, you know, you can't be an emu, because there's a potential attack to his assets. If he passed away and all of a sudden this love child knocks on the door and the wife's gone, hang on, who's this child? And all of a sudden he's not got any plan, he's not got any wills in place. You know, you've got to look at these kinds of things, and you've got to be kind of quite honest. So, you know, it is all very private, it's all confidential. But if I don't know, I can't help, and I can't advise, and I can't put things together. So all of my work is very bespoke, because people circumstances are very different.
Very different. So how often would you suggest that people need to review their wills, for example? Because if someone is progressing in their career and their circumstances are changing, do they have to then look at that and review it and then change it again? Or will it be kind of relevant regardless of how far they progress in the future?
That's a really good question. And you know what? I would say review your will every 2 years, because you forget. And you know, I was doing powers of attorney for this gentleman, an elderly gentleman. I said, look, do you want me to have a look at your will for you, just to make sure it's all okay? And he said, no, I've got it all sorted. And I said, well, I'm here, I can have a quick look. And he went, actually won't harm. So I had a look at it, and I said, so your executor was his brother-in-law. So I said, your executor is, you know, John Brown, and it wasn't John Brown, by the way, just for it, but you know, whatever. And he said, yeah, that's my brother-in-law. He died a few years ago. And I was like, right, well, okay, well, you haven't got an executor. Oh, I haven't. So the will fail because there's nobody there to execute the will. So it's things like that. So you forget that people have passed away. But I'm a big believer, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, very often I look at a will and say, do you know what? Has that changed? Has that changed? Has that changed? Has your situation changed? No, it's pretty much the same. Then leave it as is. There's no need changing it for changing's sake. It's absolutely okay. But you need to look at, you know, in that time you had the will, have you inherited money from somebody passing? So there's more money in your estate. Have you cashed out policies? Have your children had a divorce subsequently? You know, there's lots of factors. Have you had more grandkids, or something's happened? You know, have you split up from your partner? I was on a networking event, and this lady, I was chatting to a lovely lady, and I think she was just on one about anti-men at the time, and she was laughing, and she went, yes, I went through a bitter divorce about a year ago, but I've got the man of my dreams. And she was just chatting and telling me about it. So when I told her, she asked me what I did. I said wills, and she goes, oh, I did a will when I was married. So I said, so have you changed that? She went, no, doesn't it last forever? Because the misconception is, because everything's been split in a divorce, they think they've got their everything. Yeah. And I said, no, if you haven't changed it, your will is still live. So she said, are you kidding me? Because in my will, everything was going to him. And I went, yes, so if you died today, he would get everything. She was like, over my dead body, you come out, you better come out in the morning. And so, and the next morning I went first thing and changed a will. But again, people don't think, they just think, I've done a will. Yeah. You need to touch it. You really do, unless you want your ex to have everything.
And that's really important, and I think that's a great message as well. And I think because we're all so busy in our day-to-day, and as I said earlier, nobody really wants to think about dying, but when people have kids, or they're married, or they're getting divorced, or whatever, these are all life-changing things to happen, and you have to protect yourself as much as possible. And as I said, when we first had our conversation, Rekha, it gave me so much to think about. Like, my mother's will is completely out of date. But again, it's just not something that you think about. And time gets away with you as well, doesn't it? And you think you'll have more time, and it's just life gets in the way. But I think that's a really important message. So before everything to do with death, then, Rekha, and you were in the corporate world, were you responsible for, well, you had a huge team when you were at the university. So what advice do you have for developing talent in a corporate world?
You know what, the biggest, because pretty much I'd just go in, my business, you know, my experience has been go in with management accounts and just look at businesses, how you increase sales, marketing and everything. I'll be honest, the biggest nugget I can give to anyone is you're investing in staff. Your staff are everything, and it's making sure that they are being trained properly. And actually, your staff is your biggest cost in the business. It's always going to be your biggest cost, from recruitment to training. So that's what I would advise. It really is, because your costs are your costs. Your fixed costs are your costs. That nothing's going to go. You're not going to be able. You're going to be able to do very little unless you want to sacrifice service or anything else. So that would be my key, is get your stuffing right. And that is, though, in my opinion, one of the hardest.
I was always told, surround yourself with good people.
A director of one of my past said the same thing. He said to me, you recruit people that are better than you.
Absolutely.
Oh, 100%, definitely. I quite often, and even with John and I both do that. We speak to each other for advice on certain things because there's things that John knows that I don't. And even with the teams that we've got up in the Northeast as well, there's no point in thinking you're the best in comparison to everyone else, because you build a team in order to drive the business forward and have a good mix of people as well. But you're right, recruitment is hard. It is hard to find good people. But when you do find that good person, you're absolutely right. You do have to invest in the training in order to keep them on side as well. Because that's what a lot of people, especially millennials, shall we say, that's what they especially look for. So what advice would you also, Rebecca, give to people who are potentially considering retraining and going into something completely different? That would have been a massive risk for you. I remember you saying you had a great job at the uni, you had a great package, you had a great lifestyle, etc., and you went into something completely different. So what advice would you give people who maybe are in that same state of mind right now, but just don't have the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They're just not there yet.
I think with COVID as well, actually, with people being made redundant,
yeah,
and almost the hands being forced, I think a lot more people have thought about it now, and I've certainly got some friends who've been in, careers for 5, 10, 15 plus years, and they're thinking, well, can I be retrained in something? Will it pay? I've got a young family, I've got a mortgage, what do I do? So it's it's quite an interesting story. Sorry, Ash, I put it in then.
No, it's fine. Go for it.
It's really prevalent at the moment, and I'll be honest, unless you are looking at transferring into anything that's medically qualified, like I'm not going to sit there and go, right, I'm going to be trained as a doctor. I might do, but it's going to take me blooming years, and I'm already knocking on that door as it is. I would say, guys, do it. We're all very different, and we've all got different skills, and all the skills that we possess as humans are transferable. All it is, it's a different environment. My sales, you've probably guessed so far, was always sales. I started my career actually at Pitney Bowes, really. I was starting my career doing franking machines, and I was a salesperson. So inherently, I'm a salesperson. And I've done different sectors because it's not about having the same experience from company to company. It's my skills are transferable. I'm just selling something different. The product or service is different, but the way I sell it is going to be different. But even if you haven't got a sales background and you're more admin focused or more creative, your skills, whatever you have, will be transferable. Bite the bullet. You know what? Things happen for a reason, and it's just being brave enough and having that positive mindset to say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it well and do it. I wouldn't have got here if I hadn't have done it. Sometimes, at the beginning, I was like, you know what? You can't beat being your own boss. There is, you just can't. And you just think, I've spent over 20 something years in corporate. Had I worked for myself 20, 30 years ago, what position maybe financially would I have been in? But you know what? I can't regret that, because I had amazing experiences, and maybe the experiences that I had in each company made me the person now. And I might not be in this position had I not had those experiences. Some amazing, I had some amazing bosses, but some absolutely awful bosses as well, so, but it all maps you as a person. So go for it. You know what? Dip your foot into something different, because you don't know where that leads.
That's great advice, and I agree. And I think something that's been quite a common objection, I suppose, for people that I've been speaking to is age comes into it as well. They think if they've been in a job for say 20 years and they've been made redundant and they want to do something different, they think that age is against them. But I think, nah, absolutely not. Just crack on and just keep going. And a lot of people do retrain as they get older, because they don't want to keep doing the same things that they've been doing before, because they end up starting to dislike it. So I think that's great, Rekha. And hats off to you as well.
When I hear age, all I'm hearing is experience.
Yeah.
That's all I'm hearing, because I mean, it's good to have a mix of people, because you need the young, because they are our future moving forwards anyway. But you can't just surround yourself with a certain age group. You need the people with that kind of experience, because what you can't be taught is life experience. You can't be taught that. So when people talk about age, I say, for me, twist it around. It's experience you're taking somewhere else, and I'd love that kind of experience myself, you know. So
yeah. Absolutely. So finally then, Rekha, what is it that you love about the West Midlands?
Do you know what? I'm originally, although I sound like a Brummie now that my friends tell me, I was born and raised in Nottingham, so I'm actually from the East Midlands.
Ah.
But I think I've been here for 25 years, I'd say. I love the diversity. I just love the West Midlands anyway. I met my husband here, so which has been a godsend. 21 years we've been together. I just love everything. Like I said, I love the people here. I love the infrastructure. I love the companies, the opportunities here. We're smack bang in the middle of England, so travel up north and down south is just perfect.
Apart from to the beach.
Yeah. Actually, the most central place for the beach is Tamworth, I think.
Is it?
In England, yeah, apparently so. But yeah, it's a fantastic, and it's, you know, it's a second city. As you know, when I was in hospitality in the conferencing world, I think we used to have a bit of a joke that Manchester thought that they were the second city, but it's I think they were talking about, I think if you looked at a certain area of density of population, Manchester would be bigger, but it's not. Birmingham was the second city, and it's just I think it's just getting better and better. It's a fantastic city.
Well, you're one of the first people that I met, actually. I say met because we've not physically met yet. We've only ever just met on Zoom, which is crazy. But you were one of the first people that I met coming down there. So you hold a special place in my heart, Rekha, and you always will, because you've made me feel very welcome.
Yeah, and I can't wait to meet face to face.
I know. With some fizz and gin. John, you can come and you can have the pints.
Oh, brilliant. I look forward to that.
Right, well, Rekha, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And we will catch up again soon. But thank you so much for being on the show. It is much appreciated.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Chatted and chatted, but it's been brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Rekha. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.